Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the 9th episode of the Shooting Time podcast. We've got a cool guest on today, someone I've actually just met, and we will get into that in just a moment. First, I'm sitting here kind of in a frazzled mess. I just got back from a duck hunt from this morning. It's early afternoon here on Thursday. I'm kind of a few days late getting this podcast out, but getting timing lined up with a certain duck call show that was just going on, kind of pushed some things off a little bit. But yeah, me and a buddy had a really good duck hunt this morning. We ended up killing a limit of mallards and on a little public piece, actually private, technically, I guess, on some flooded corn where the public stuff flooded up into that. It was really good. We once the sun came up, it was good. The first morning, the first little flight was actually terrible, and all we had was flaring ducks. And as soon as the sun hit the decoys and gave us a little bit of shade in the corn, we were money after that. And so we were heading home, and I had an hour and a half or so to prepare for this podcast, I was thinking, and all was good. And I get home, and I look at my blind bag, and I go, I don't know where my duck calls are. And I'm sure everybody has a certain routine. I always, or at least always thought that I did, take my calls off when I either was out of the boat or done hunting or whatever, and stick in my blind bag in a certain spot. And I get home, and sure enough, they were not there. And, a little bit of panic sets in immediately. And I'm like, they just got to be in the truck. Well, they're not in the truck. I look there, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe in my camera bag. And they're not in my camera bag. And then I kind of freak out, and I look in the pouch of my waders, and they're not there. And I asked my buddy if they ended up in his blind bag, and of course they didn't. So I freak out. He takes care of ducks for me. I end up driving back down almost a half hour to our spot to look on the side of the road where my truck was parked and where we pulled our boats up, and of course they're not there. Because I don't know why I'd left them sit there, but maybe they're in our pile of stuff, and they weren't there. So I drive home thinking, well, I just lost all my calls. Of course, all my favorite ones. Most of them are older. I mean, not classic, but they're 10 plus years on most of them. And all my bands, I don't have a ton, but I got probably 14 or 15 between duck and goose bands, and don't think I'd ever replace those. I would probably never buy other ones. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to start fresh on that and go through my call collection and find which calls I want to replace all my other ones with. So I was pretty bummed out after that, after having a good duck hunt, and then you turn it into a lost lanyard. The only good thing I do have, and as a note on that, is I was thinking that if someone happened to ever find it, this is something that you might want to think about doing, because another friend of mine, Mike Anderson, actually out of Minnesota, he lost his lanyard off the back of his truck, and he did not have the same thing I'm going to tell you about on there, and so he never got it back. But I have a dog tag made, like an actual dog tag that would go on your dog's collar. Like I did it when I worked at Cabela's, and I put my name and my phone number, and I put a note on the other side: if found, please return to my name. And I put my phone number on there in the odd chance that, maybe who finds it was pretty honest. So I was hoping that maybe I'd get a phone call that someone drove down the road and picked it up ahead of me, and that didn't happen. So I got home, and I dig through my truck again, and I dig through all the blind bags, and I go through everything. And finally I'm like, let's just check one last thing. I reach down in the bottom of my wader boot, and all I feel is dampness. I'm like, oh man. I reached down in the other one, and sure enough, I stuck my finger in the end of my goose call, and they were sitting down in there. So the disaster was averted. And I was thinking to myself the whole time as I was driving back, I'm thinking, well, I have the perfect podcast guest on today, because this is the guy that can get me set up with a new duck call. But unfortunately, he's so busy, unless he was going to make an emergency situation for me, I wouldn't have it till next year. So, that guy is Josh Raggio, pronounced several ways, as I just found out. But anyways, he is a custom call maker out of Mississippi. What town are you from, Josh?
I live in Raymond, which is a little small town just outside of Jackson. When I say small town, like we have one stop sign. It's what we have.
Man, stop sign or stop light?
Stop sign. We have a 4-way stop right in the middle of the town square, and that is.
You have a diner.
That's it.
You have a diner and a bar.
Diner. We've got a little Mexican restaurant, and we've got a Subway and a Pizza Hut. Just came in.
That's pretty big time. That's big time for
they cook a mean lunch in the grocery store.
Ooh, that's some of the
chicken.
That's some of the best. That's a lot. So if you have a grocery store in a one stop sign town, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's not the grocery store that you're probably used to though. It's
little. Yeah, that's what we got here. I'm in Salem, South Dakota, and we have 1,300 people, so we're not tiny by any means, but we're big in South Dakota terms. But in most people who are listening are living in big cities or whatever. We're tiny still, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way, man.
No.
I grew up in this town and moved away for college, and then a little while after college when I first got married, and just gravitated back. Couldn't stay away from small town living. A little slower, a little quieter.
Oh, it really is.
I love it.
There's no doubt. Like, when I was younger, the town I grew up in was about 8,000 when I was in high school on that. And, everybody hated the town, and there was nothing good going on and all that baloney when you're young. And then after college, I thought, I moved back, and I didn't love it, didn't hate it. But I moved away, and I moved to like a suburb of Minneapolis, and man, you could not pay me enough to move back into that scenario again. There's literally not a pay gap that I would take unless it was enough that I could work for like 1 year and then retire and move back away. Cause I hate it. Everything about it. You don't trust or know your neighbors. You're driving super long distances to get to hunting stuff, and then it's crowded, and everywhere you go, like every time I go back to that area, just driving down the roads, I think to myself, how did I ever do this for a few years where I thought it was normal, to have to spend 45 minutes to drive 15 miles.
Yeah, it's crazy. I actually lived in, I lived in Chicago for a year, my junior year of college. And man, you talk about shell shock.
Yeah. Coming from a little town in Mississippi to Chicago.
It was,
that's one of the most congested places you can go.
I don't know, man. It was great. It wasn't my style. That's for sure.
Other than the music scene, I don't know that I really appreciate Chicago all that much. As far as having some blues music there, because I'm kind of a blues music fan, so I dig having that stuff, having that available right there. But other than that, no thanks. It's one of those places where you like to visit, but you don't want to live.
Yeah, great place to go for a week, but
yeah,
don't want to live there again.
Man, beyond that, it just drives you nuts. Oh, that's cool. So you in Mississippi are. I seem to have, all my guests either seem to be from what I would consider the South. And obviously you would say you're from the South, Mississippi, or from Minnesota. And just as we were, so everyone knows, we were chatting a little bit last night on the phone just to kind of get a feel for each other. And as I was driving around talking to him on the phone, he's probably getting annoyed because I was stopping all the time. I'd say, "Oh, hold on a minute. I gotta watch this field and see if I can hear any more ducks in this field." Because I'm not going to say exactly where I was, but I'm in the eastern half of South Dakota, and there's, we've received a fair amount of rain, and there's flooded cornfields around. And so you might see 2 or 5 or 20 ducks go down into somewhere that you can't see the water. So my scouting method is just to usually stop, turn my truck off, get as close as I can, and then turn my truck off and just listen for a bit. And if it sounds like a refuge, then you know it's somewhere you need to ask. And if you don't hear a refuge in there, well, you still might need to ask based on what you see go in. But sometimes you just catch that 1 or 2 ducks going. And like the spot I hunted today, I just saw like a few birds land back in this little pocket. And, like we get back in this morning and we had an eruption of ducks. So kind of such a totally different style of hunting that than what you guys, I would consider down south, have, simply due to lack of pressure. And I think Josh commented on that as to how unique of a situation it is to our area of the country, and you guys just don't ever have that option even to really do that.
We don't, I wasn't annoyed, by the way. I was envious.
Okay.
I was living vicariously through you last night as you're watching ducks pour into a field.
Yeah,
it's 90 degrees where I'm sitting.
Yeah, we were talking. It was cool last night here. Today it's actually 70 out now. Like I was hot and just a wool like base layer on my row back into the boat. So, but heck, just like a week or 10 days ago, we had a heck of a cold front come through. I had snow. My yard was completely white with snow.
Wow.
Like a little over a week ago, maybe not even a week ago. I'm trying to think of when that was. Whatever it was cold. It was 22 degrees. It was chilly. We had a big push of birds, and this is by far the best October duck hunting I've seen since I've lived in South Dakota for 10 years now. And
Really?
typically I'm driving, everybody thinks of South Dakota as just this place just absolutely filled with ducks this time of year. And there's spots that maybe are, but it's a little more widespread. I mean, a guy can go anywhere in that, especially the northern half of the state, and find ducks right now after that cold front came through. That North Dakota really got hit, and man, we saw some birds go through, and even today, we saw specks migrating again. Every day I've been hunting the last 10 days, it's just been like non-stop specks migrating overhead. Buddy of mine's a pilot that I hunted with today, and he actually took a guy down to Stuttgart 2 days ago, and he said there's specks all over down there already. So there's been a lot of stuff on the move. So
it's good to hear. I can't wait for him to get here.
Yeah. Yeah. When do they get there is the question.
That's a great question.
Because you're not far from Stuttgart, right?
I'm about 4 hours.
So relative to me, you're super close. I'm about 15.
Yeah, a lot closer than that.
Yeah.
But we hunt that, what you were talking about earlier, like the way you hunt up there is totally different than the way we do it. I mean, it's unheard of, to ride around, look for ducks and knock on somebody's door. It just doesn't happen. Now you get into the, extended goose and stuff like that. It does happen then because, the farmers they would like for you to shoot all the snow geese,
Oh, for sure.
But it doesn't happen with duck hunting. Everything is leased. If it's not leased, it's owned by a duck hunter.
Oh, and,
yeah. I mean, it's just not how we are able to hunt down here.
And there's, I've always, I think I've said this before, probably in different episodes, but it's one of those things that it's very cool. There's positives and negatives to it because you have that culture of duck hunting. Like you probably grew up around it. I grew up around it in Minnesota, but I was talking to one of the landowners, the guy that we hunted today. So what we did is we paddled through a half mile of public marsh that's super flooded, like places that would never be water, but now it's like flares grass and marsh grass or prairie grass with water over it. We paddled through that for probably half a mile, and we kind of jutted into a little flooded spot in a cornfield. And the guy I talked to last night, we were chatting a little bit about how he doesn't let anybody deer hunt, but if a guy asks, I usually let him duck hunt, he said, and I was thinking about how, as I was talking to him for probably half an hour, about how good we have it, that's something that we can even do, because like I said, I mean, like where you guys are, like when I've been on the times I've been to Arkansas or Oklahoma and Southern Illinois, I've just like, it would be humorous to go and knock on someone's door that had a duck slough or some standing timber, flooded timber in their backyard, and ask them to duck hunt. I mean, the look on their face would probably be like, boy, are you serious?
Yeah. It just, I really hope that it stays that way, for you. Cause the alternative is not fun, I mean, it's, the alternative is either you have to come up with a bunch of money for a lease or, you hunt public land. And, which is, what I do, but, that's a whole nother set of challenges.
Oh, for sure it is.
You get to that point.
And even here, public land is actually up until tomorrow, hunting public land is okay. Because what happens here in South Dakota tomorrow's okay. As of Saturday is our pheasant season opener. And I mean, it's an unbelievable, like, barrage of orange coming on Saturday. And so what happens is all these public spots, every piece that has water, well, it has some cattails and it has some grass around it. So people hunt the crap out of it. And either their presence by walking kicks ducks up off of the sloughs in there, or they're shooting at pheasants and that kicks all the ducks off. So it never fails that after the opening weekend of pheasant season, I'm not going to say that you never get ducks on public, especially on bigger public pieces. You can, like, if it's really big water and the ducks feel safe out in the middle, but like all these nice little, like, spots that we have with little, like, cool little marshes and small prairie potholes, those things just get enough pressure. I mean, every single day they get someone walking through them for pheasants. So the birds are never on there. And this is the first October where I've shot, I don't even know how many days worth of mallards or duck limits we've shot. And there's just ducks around, and that typically is not the case. And we were talking about, that's why we hunted this, even though we technically were on private today, we were only off of public by like 50 yards. So essentially it's hunting the public ducks. And we said we need to hunt this before pheasant opener, or they're going to be long gone, because someone's going to get in there and shoot 6 times at one pheasant, and those ducks are all going to pick up and go away and never to be seen again on that piece until, maybe mid-November, when some of that traffic kind of eases off a little bit. So even up here, like, our public it's not always great. And we have some lakes and that kind of stuff that, we definitely shoot ducks on those public things later. But all of our nice little small public stuff, that we've got a lot of public land, and man, it just gets beat up by the pheasant guys, and there's no chance. So,
well, I mean, when you think of South Dakota, I mean, at least if you're from the South, I mean, you don't necessarily think duck hunting. I mean, it's pheasant.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's one of the cool things when I was working at Cabela's, and tomorrow at the store I worked at, it's in Mitchell, South Dakota. It's it's basically the, like, epicenter of the pheasant hunting world. And that,
sure.
At that little store, it was one of the smallest Cabela stores. They don't do it anymore, but for one of the first few years I was there, I mean, we would do close to $1 million in sales in a day.
Wow.
When you combined sales and license sales. So, I mean, it was unbelievable, the amount of traffic, and it was super cool. And it was all dudes from Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, California, people from other countries. And it was so fun to see that. And that's what everybody thought of. And you'd always get these guys that would come in here and, a little bit later in the season. And it seemed like it was always dudes from South Carolina. And they'd always want to be able to buy hunting licenses. Well, our duck hunting licenses are on a lottery system, so they couldn't get them. And they would see, they'd be pheasant hunting, they would see ducks on a cool little slough somewhere, and they'd want to go hunt them and get a license. Well, I had to be the guy to explain to them why they couldn't get them. And of course, personally, as a duck hunter, I was glad that that's how it was. And, they didn't like to hear that either, that the fact they couldn't come hunt just whenever they wanted. But, it's
a bucket list thing, the pheasant, South Dakota pheasant hunt, for a lot of people, me included, never done it, but it's kind of one of those things that, I don't know, I guess for people that aren't close to the, public land, flooded timber, a lot of, that's a bucket list hunt for a lot of guys, going to flooded timber in Arkansas or Mississippi or wherever.
Absolutely.
And, this what we do. It's just because it's here.
You take it for granted.
Yeah, man. That pheasant thing that's a cool deal. We'll do that one day.
You dig it. Like someday, we'll have to talk about this later. We'll have to get you up here duck hunting, and then you do it during pheasant season. Like, you would never want to come before pheasant season, but you get up and there's plenty of opportunities for people to come and shoot duck or shoot pheasants, in South Dakota on public ground, especially later in the season, if a guy, everybody comes the first 2 weekends. That's the huge barrage of when there's just people absolutely everywhere. But if you come in, say, like the second week in November, and the guy has a dog, or maybe third week in November, if you have a dog and you're willing to walk some cattails and the crops are out, and you put your time in and put some miles in it, you're going to shoot your birds. You may not shoot a limit, especially, but you got to come with 2 or 3 guys, not a big group.
Right.
And a couple good dogs, and a guy will shoot pheasants, and you'll shoot wild birds. When you go to most of these, if you go to a ranch or a pheasant, whatever, and they're going to say that they have wild birds, but the wild bird thing isn't happening on those places. They're planting birds and they're releasing birds and that, because as many birds as we have, you can't shoot 600 birds off of a 160 acre piece of ground and expect there to be wild pheasants left after that. So,
right.
But yeah, if a guy wants to come shoot pheasants on public ground in South Dakota, it's very doable. Christ, there's guys that farm, like they don't hardly farm for crop anymore. They farm for pheasants at this point. Yeah. So it's a huge piece of our economy. It would be like, it's like the Stuttgart of the duck hunting world, where everything is focused around that. Lodges and hotels and all that kind of stuff. It's cool to see. And I'm super glad that I'm not working tomorrow, because tomorrow was that day that's really, really busy. And this is my first year of not doing
15 years of it already.
Yeah. I had 15, 16 years of that. And I am going to, wherever I'm hunting tomorrow, and I've got a couple of good spots lined up. And even if it's bad and super miserable and anything short of me losing my lanyard again, I'm just going to sit back and just constantly remind myself that I am not at Cabela's getting my ass kicked right now every single minute, trying to put out a fire of some sort, or get more people here, or get more people, or who knows, and whatever it was. It's complete chaos is what it is. So I'm just going to enjoy the fact that I'm not there doing that. So,
well, I'll enjoy the fact that I'm in Mississippi and not hunting, but I get to make duck calls while you're out slamming mallards.
Oh, heck yeah, man. Yeah, I will. I'll send you a text tomorrow of my of our ducks that we get. I think it should be good. We hunted it was weird. Like, I don't know if you've hunted flooded corn much, and we don't get a chance to do it a lot, but here when we get flooded corn, it's like a natural flooded corn. It's typically, it's not like it's never man-made type flooded corn, like in a lot of states where they control it. We don't have we don't have any of that. And oddly, it doesn't seem like it's legal here. No one does it. And maybe because no one needs to, because we don't have the pressure. But it's weird because when you hunt it, like, it can either be unbelievable lights out, like, a week ago, me and a buddy and one of his friends went and hunted it, and we were done in literally 10 minutes shooting greenhead or 15 greenheads in 15 shots. Every one of them at like 15 yards. It was awesome. Wow. And then today, God, we hunted, and these birds aren't pressured. They're definitely not pressured in that little spot. And I kicked a ton of boats out when I pulled my, or a ton of mallards out of this thing when I pulled my boat into this little hole. And God, we just could not get birds to finish. And then all of a sudden the sun came up and got higher, and then they started doing it better. Yeah. But it was just this weird thing of how this flooded corn up here works. And it can be like the most depressing thing in the world, knowing that you're in a spot that should just be lights out, yet you're struggling. And when I say struggling, we were done by a little before 10 o'clock. So it's not like it was terrible, and it was still a limit of mallards, and we had tons of chances on all of our other ducks. So that was cool. But I think I forgot the whole point of my story there. But so anyways, we hunt this, we're hunting this flooded corn, and we're having birds that are like, we're coming over us. We would hit them with a call, and maybe this is something you guys noticed too down there, but this is one benefit of being in a southern state, and that people in the southern states don't realize, is that this time of year, a mallard is really not very callable. they aren't responsive to a call like you guys see in November, December, maybe January.
Yeah.
Whereas like right now, like we had multiple singles, pairs, triples, groups of 10 and 20 mallards working over the top of us, working off the side of us. And if it was 3 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now and we cranked on them, I would expect just to see a whole bunch of backs and at least come and work us. But man, they just, this time of year, like, and we're rapidly approaching the time where it starts to switch, but they just don't respond to a call this time of year like they do starting November 1st. And this is the one time of year where I would consider a mojo to be acceptable because of that. Because I'm not a mojo fan or a spinning wing fan. But man, we were debating about if we would have had one, we probably would have stuck that sucker in the mud and let her rip. But we don't have.
What makes you not a fan of it? Like the tradition side of things?
Yeah, the tradition side. I can't even say the tradition side. But that's part of it. But the fact that we like, and I think I want to get into more of this, maybe a little in depth later, is it's more of letting the duck hunting side be an art rather than a technological battle and a gadget battle to see who's going to get more ducks or to help get more ducks in. And then it's just a personal preference, because there's like everyone picks their gadgets that they're going to use. Like I use a duck call, it's a gadget, but that's something that you work at and perfect as an art, I think, to do it. So
yeah, flipping a button.
Yeah, you don't just flip a button and then all of a sudden the ducks just magically come in. So
yeah, no, I get it.
That's always that's actually exactly been my thing is you turn a switch on and here come the ducks and watch out.
Yeah.
So, but, like these ducks up here, like right now, they just aren't very callable. And we had all these ducks come by and we'd get them to maybe like break real quick. And then on the circles and on the corners, you just don't get them to snap like you do come November 1st. So it's super frustrating because with a mojo, maybe you would get them to just come down in on that first swoop and you bang them up and then you don't have to worry about them coming over the head of you. Because in a flooded cornfield, that's one of those goofy things is they get over the top of you and man, they just peer right down into there. And no matter what you're wearing, they seem like to see a buddy of mine has started wearing like dark brown and black sweatshirts and jackets so that you kind of match like the rows. And I thought, maybe I'll wear really light colors to match the stocks. And that doesn't, I mean, they bust you and it's a weird deal. So
what are you using for, movement? Are you using a jerk cord, kicking water?
We didn't, we were actually kicking water today in this cornfield. We didn't bring a jerk cord. We wish we would have. And everybody who hunts with me probably gets sick of me saying this, but I always say, man, we should have brought a jerk cord today because I've said it probably a half dozen times this year. And we never bring one because they're just, in this kind of situation, they're actually very handy. Typically we're hunting out of a boat in a little bit deeper water, not over our head or over our waders type deep. Yeah. But we're hunting where the dog is swimming. So then you've got kind of a pain in the butt because the dog gets in it and all that baloney. But like today, it was only knee deep. So the dog is still walking and it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah.
So we definitely could have used it. And it probably would have been really smart, but we didn't have any motion. The motion thing brings up a whole thing that I do want to talk about at some point in time and maybe talk about it real quick now is, motion has been a word. You gotta have motion in your decoys and your decoys got to be moving. And my dad, when I started hunting 30 some years ago, my dad said that and you hear it all the time. But to be honest, I don't think that your decoys moving matters a single bit. I think you could take water decoys, put them on a stake above the water, but as long as you have the waves going, I think you're golden. I think it's that calm water that screws you. Which is where
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. I don't think having, and then it goes the same for goose hunting. Like everybody wants stakes on their decoy so that they move. I'm like, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Just put wind over those decoys so that those geese have something to work into, and you're good. On ducks on water, you put waves on the water and that little ripple. Doesn't matter if your decoy moves a centimeter over the next 100 years, you're good as long as you got those waves.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for us, I mean, the jerk cord is just as important as, your lanyard full of calls. I mean, it's equally as important. So we all keep them in a blind bag, and extra ones in boats and stuff.
Especially for you guys, right? Because you mainly hunt the timber.
Yeah,
you're hunting the woods. So so there's a lot of people who are probably listening to this if they're from the northern half of the country who've not, or western or eastern. If you're not in that little tiny little slice that has that close to home, if the one thing that you really quickly learn when you're hunting flooded timber is that your duck call is a close quarters tool, because like where we are, we're calling it ducks that are, and we've turned ducks half a mile, maybe more, half a mile, probably. Maybe that's the limit. Half a mile away with 2 or 3 of us calling super aggressive. We will turn ducks from half a mile away, in the places that we hunt. Whereas you have no chance of seeing a duck more than a few hundred yards, maybe off to the side.
Maybe, kind of depending on your setup and the size timber you're in, basically.
If you were going to hunt on the first few weeks of the season when you got leaves on the ground or on the trees, you're looking almost straight up.
Yeah, essentially.
And then
that's right.
As like when I've been there, it's always been in, I think January is out when I've always been into Arkansas. And so you can see out a little bit in certain places. You can see a little bit more off the side, but you're not calling the ducks that are, I mean, I don't think we've ever called ducks over a few hundred yards away. Like you don't see them, or it seems like it's pointless. But you're sure getting on them when they're close. And then a lot of ducks coming over the top of you. So that jerk cord is absolutely vital at that point.
Yeah, I think part of it is
kicking.
Obviously you're going to call ducks when you can see them at the right times and all that. But, oftentimes I'm not going to say that we sit out there from, shooting time till we leave blowing a call, but you can, and it is advantageous. I mean, we blow a call even though we're not seeing ducks. I mean, it's kind of like what else is there to do? I mean, so you're doing some, just short, quick, kind of bursty hail calls or, greetings and things like that.
Just aggressive hands just to there. Get them.
Just, you want them to come where you can see them, obviously. So we do a pretty good bit of calling when you're not even, what you would consider a slow time, just because you can't see, past 200 yards doesn't mean there's ducks. The ducks aren't there.
Yeah, for sure.
And we kick the water. This is a lot of noise. I mean, if you listen in the woods to a bunch of ducks,
super nice. It's so cool. Here's another cool thing that me being an outsider, that one of the things I recognize about how cool in the woods is those ducks feel very safe when they're on the water in there.
On a sunny day.
On a sunny day, super safe. Yes. Yeah. Oh man, the sun is
not a cloudy day.
Everything's
going to eat them on a cloudy day, I think.
I hate it. Think. Oh yeah. Like your face, the zipper on your jacket they see it. It's the worst. A tree branch. So, but when they're on the water in the woods and you're hunting, it's amazing how many ducks can be around you. Yeah. At certain times. I mean, you'll be sitting there, and we had one. I mean, it was actually one year, the best year I've ever had down there. We were in the middle. We had about a half to 3/4 mile walk through the woods. And we got up to an area where there was nobody else hunting, and there was an ungodly amount of ducks. And it was almost a detriment because we were fighting all these ducks around us. We had like a circle of ducks around us. And so you're sitting there and you're hearing, and then splashing and everything every way around you. And like up here, like if a mallard sees you at, a quarter mile away, that sucker is gone.
Right.
But they will swim. You'll be hunting and they'll swim by you at 80 yards and you'll see two greenheads just putz right on by you at 80 yards and they don't care and they're cool. And then they go swim off and you never see them again. And then 5 minutes later, there goes another bunch of 20 of them go swim through. And so
it's different. It's interesting, from what you guys do.
It really is. And one of these days I'm just going to do an entire episode about the timber hunt, and because it's got a lot of mystery to it, and a lot of people I think are super intimidated by it, and rightly so, because it's an entirely different thing than what 90% of the geographical part of the country does. I mean, a lot of probably more than that of percent of duck hunters are located in that area, but so much of the country does not have that and never sees it. And until you do it, until you find yourself in the middle of a woods that you could be deer hunting in, and then place 1.5 foot of water in that for sometimes a mile on each side, like it's hard to almost like think of what it's even like to hunt in that kind of stuff. So I know like our first trip down was like, well, for me, the guy I went with, he had done some stuff in Missouri and one other trip into Arkansas. So he was familiar with it. But for me, like the first day of driving our boat through the woods, it was just the crazy. I mean, it was awesome. Like I sat there and we're kicking ducks up and I'm like, I don't care if I shoot a duck from here on out. This has just been fun. Just like an adventure just to get in here. So it's a cool deal.
Yeah. I've had, we have a really good group, everybody kind of has their group, of guys they hunt with. And I'm fortunate to hunt with some just fantastic hunters, and callers also. I think my group, we've out of, it's about 10 of us, 12 of us, and not everybody can hunt all at the same time. But, I think out of our group, we've, blown in the worlds, 7 or 8 times combined. So some really good callers in our group.
Yeah.
And you gotta be in the woods. But what I was going to say is you've heard of, buck fever, a guy, big buck comes by him and he just doesn't shoot. He watches him. We've had guests, come with us before and it's their first time in the woods. And all of a sudden, you land a big group and they don't ever shoot. And you kind of look over at them and their eyes are just huge and they have a huge smile on their face.
Yeah.
And they're just like transfixed on
what happened. That was my first flock. My first flock that came in, that we had come in on when we were by ourselves. They came in. It was like 6 of them just floated right down and landed 15 yards in front of us. We never pulled the trigger. I was like, wow, that's so cool. It's such a different thing than having ducks come in over open water or even a marsh, even a small marsh. It's something else, it's 1,000% different than what you've ever done before if you've never done it. And I laugh because like here in South Dakota, we have a lot of our water level has been increasing for the last 20 years. So we have all these lakes that have a smattering of dead timber on them. And, it's like a tree every 20 feet or 30 feet, or, I mean, not even anywhere near that dense. And guys are like, oh yeah, we hunted flooded timber and we've had them. They're like, no, it's not the same. It's not the same because they're not fluttering down, breaking branches, crisscrossing in front of you. It's not the same. Nowhere in the country has it besides Missouri. Oklahoma has a teeny tiny bit. Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, I think maybe has a little tiny bit. Maybe. Tiny.
About it.
No.
I'll tell you a quick story. So one of our buddies in our group, Brooks, he and his dad took, I won't say the guy's name, but he's a pretty famous hunter. This guy, killed everything in Africa, and he's just just hunted everything all around the world, been in every situation. So they take him to flooded timber for the first time. And that first group, it happens like I just explained. They come through, and it's a group of about 100, which is a lot of ducks.
That's a lot of ducks coming through the woods.
And
it's noisy.
It looks like 1,000.
And it's noisy.
So they shoot, he's calling shots. He says, take him or whatever. And they shoot, boom, 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 boom. They look over, and the guy did not pull the trigger. And he said that he literally, he's killed, almost everything you can shoot and hunt. Yep. And, he said, that is the single most exciting thing I've ever witnessed in my life, from an outdoor experience. The guy did not pull his trigger.
Isn't that cool?
That. I mean, it is, it's that enthralling, to see happen for the first time.
You can't even hardly explain it until you've done it. Like you can try to imagine what it's like, but until you've seen it I think the hearing, for me, what I'm hearing as that's happening is as cool as what I'm seeing. Like I remember we had one day where I just sat, and it was dark. Like I tried to video with my cell phone, and it was like pitch black yet, and we heard wings go overhead. So we get on our call, and we're kicking water, and all of a sudden, and I have no idea how many it was because I couldn't see, but I just had my cell phone up, and I'm listening, and the next thing I know, there's ducks probably at 5 or 10 yards, hovering. And you're hearing the branches are breaking, and how hard those ducks hit the water. People don't know this, but they don't softly come down. They go, bloosh. Yeah, they bloop and they blop down, and they're under the water, and they pop back up, and there they are looking around. And it's just the coolest thing. The sounds are every bit as cool, I think, as what you see. And if someone wants to do it, I don't want to have it. Well, Arkansas just put a bunch of regulations to prevent some people from coming, but I don't think, if it's something you want to do, I'm just going to say, you just need to do it, and you need to expect that your first trip might be a bust. You might have one good day out of four days, because you're going to spend the day learning it. You're going to spend a day scouting. Then you're going to have a good day, and then the next day may or may not be good, because
it's difficult. What you and I are talking about is the end result.
Exactly.
Getting to that point between first of all knowing where you're going, second of all actually getting there, and typically it's a boat race. And with all the regulations on times, you only leave a certain time. There's no more going the day before and sleeping in the hole, and things like that. And, if you get beat to the hole that you want, you better have plan B, C, and D.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully, you have that. So it's a lot of times it's just a cluster, the boat ramp, and, emotions run high. Everybody's tired and everybody's excited, and and you've got guys are going over the same spot, and and so it's who can get there the fastest and not make a wrong turn, because literally one wrong turn, on a 15 to 45 minute boat ride, and you lose your hole. It's not important,
and it's being in that stuff in the dark is an entirely different world. Trying to navigate your way through some of that stuff in a boat in the dark, even walking in the dark. It's confusing and it's hard, and you better have a GPS if you don't know even if I don't know how you would even know where you're going, to be honest.
You just do it so much. And what we used to do, again, the regulations have changed to where, used to you could hunt till, lunch or so, then you had to be out, but then you could go back and scout. You just couldn't have any hunting stuff on you. A lot of places now, in the South, I'm talking about anything specific, Mississippi and Arkansas, you can't even set foot on that place after, 1 o'clock anymore. And so is the place that hurts new hunters, because you either got to decide if you're going to hunt that morning or scout that morning, or. So the place that we talked about yesterday that I won't mention, did that change that you can't go back in there after 1? Because did what change?
The place that we talked about, can you still go into that place and scout?
No.
Oh, that just changed in the last, year then? Or 2?
It's been a couple of years, yeah.
Because, I was there 2
years ago. That's where we benefited. as a group, when I say talking about, good hunters, guys that aren't lazy, we'd be up at, 2 to be at the boat ramp, get in line, essentially race or get to a hole, hunt, get back out, take all your stuff back to wherever you're staying, then go back and scout all afternoon.
That's what we did too. That is the difference, I think, because it's, and here's the thing that's like one of the huge differences that I see from where I'm at to where you're at. Like I can scout, I'm driving and I pull up my binoculars and I scan the horizon and I'm scouting 2-mile radius around where I'm at.
Yeah.
I see, or more, or maybe more. I mean, if it's a big wad of ducks, I'm going to see them at 3 miles. Well, then I go drive however far I need to go, west or east or north or whatever direction I see a big mob of ducks, and I go find them. And oh, there they are. Pull up the plat book. Oh, they're on Onyx. And there they are. Boom. Maybe I get permission. Maybe they're in public. But when you're in that stuff, like your scouting is limited to the river channel and what you see cross in front of you.
Yeah.
Essentially. Like, yeah, basically what you got.
When you're scouting, you're not looking for, you love to find ducks, but you rarely do. You're looking for
a flight line,
promising spots, and
a flight line.
Wind tomorrow, you're looking for the whole setup. Is there a tall tree where they're going to line up, or is there a short tree? Can they even line up and get in that hole?
Yep.
That you want to hunt based on the wind. All right. So if that's good, now is there a spot on the other side of the hole? Can we hide everybody that's going tomorrow? Where are we going to hide? It's pretty, to figure that out the day before and not at 4 a.m. when it's dark. Sometimes you have to, it's part of it, but when we scout, it's, you're not necessarily looking for ducks. You're looking for spots that are good for the conditions for the next day or for the future. We log all that stuff, and
for sure.
Like I said, I just hunt with some great guys that just get after it, and they're really good at that whole part of hunting. And that's probably why it makes it so sweet when you do actually have a good day in the woods, is all the work that went into it. The reward is just that much better when it all comes together. Okay. And it doesn't happen every day.
No,
There's a lot of perception that, you hunt in the woods, you hunt in Mississippi or Arkansas, you always got ducks. And it's not how it works.
You have ducks. So that's one thing I've always found funny is, since I've been coming down there, is I always get a kick out of when you hear, oh, we don't have any ducks this year. There's no ducks. And you sit at the refuge or the boat launch or wherever you are, and you're watching tens of thousands of ducks pour out. See, because we don't get that, is what we don't typically have up here, is we don't have those huge congregations like you guys get in the refuges and the resting spots where these ducks go, and then they work their way out over the woods. We'll have 1,000 here.
I would say that, we have ducks, but I think there's a word maybe, that doesn't get used, is killable ducks. They're smart. They know, they know if they're on a refuge or a sanctuary.
Oh, for sure.
Hence why there's 100,000 of them sitting there, and not 100,000 feet on the side,
sitting in the woods. Yeah, right exactly. There, and that's exactly one of the points that I like to make about, because people, the further south down the line you get, everybody likes to think that their ducks are smarter and smarter. And I don't agree with that, because I think they're smarter the longer they've been in the spot.
Yeah.
I will tell people right now, so our ducks that we have right now, our forecast is nice and warm for the next 10 days. These ducks are going to have been here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks now. And at the end of that 2 or 3 weeks, even though we're in North Dakota or South Dakota, those ducks are going to know where they're going, and they're going to be just as tough as a duck that's been sitting at the same spot in Arkansas or Mississippi or Kansas or wherever for 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever. But there's a certain time frame where they just get comfortable and they know their gig and they know where they're safe. And I would any day rather hunt. I think I've even said this exact same thing before. I'd rather hunt a duck on on southern Louisiana in the end of January that just showed up to that spot than I would a duck who's been sitting on the same lake in South Dakota for 10 days, without a doubt.
Yeah. The one thing that I wouldn't agree or disagree necessarily. I mean, it's, but the one thing I do see is if you are in the South and you're hunting a field and you're in some type of blind, like not a layout, but a sled blind, something above ground,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you watch a flight of snows come to you, and let's say they're in a straight line from left to right, coming right at you. As they get to about 300 yards of where you're sitting in that sled blind, you can watch them split, and they will not fly over that blind. And to me, that's an educated bird.
Yeah.
There's a reason they're splitting or veering and not flying directly over. And then they get by you and they get right back together.
Yeah.
Keep going.
We get the same thing, though. You'd be shocked. I mean, we do get the same thing a lot of times, even with Canadas, even with ducks. Like once, you know, like it's hard to explain it being up here, but I'm certainly haven't spent a ton of time hunting down south, but enough. And I've hunted from basically the Canadian border to the southern edge of South Dakota a very lot. And most people would consider that to be the top of the flyway, and we're not, but I would argue that we're not. We're definitely at the bottom. But we get a lot of pressure in certain areas of our stuff, and those birds get super educated if they've been here for a while. But man, like as soon as you get a fresh batch in, you get that first few days, and they're just dumb. But if those same birds that were dumb 4 days ago, if they're rafted up out on the main lake of a big marsh, all of a sudden, after they've seen that same thing for 3 or 4 days, they're not dumb anymore.
They got educated.
Yeah, they got educated real quick. And the thing, in the difference that I do see in the southern side of life versus like up here is that we tend to not. Those aren't like our ducks all year. Like we get more of a migration where you guys get huge pushes in, and then those ducks sit there for probably longer periods because there's only so far south that they can go or are going to go. And then that's where and that's where they are. Like they're going to sit on such and such lake inside of a public hunting area for maybe a couple weeks at a time. And then maybe they get pushed off because it gets cold or it gets warm and they go back north. But then when they go back north again, all of a sudden those things, they're not educated again, and they're going to be very susceptible to getting shot for 2 or 3 or 4 days. So it's just it's kind of is weird how they work. I mean, it makes total sense when you think about it because they just don't know the rules of the game yet when it comes to that particular spot. But
we use the term new ducks.
Yeah, new ducks. That's exactly it.
We're watching freeze lines and weather patterns and stuff like that, and you're hoping for new ducks, and that's what you're talking about. It's not is ducks that aren't educated on your particular spot yet, and you're hoping for a sunny day, and these ducks are looking for woods to get out and rest in, and and all the stars align, and you have a great hunt. But new ducks is the term that is what you're referring to.
We call them workers. It's an old Barney Califf term from one of the old Take-'em videos, and you just know, you can see it in how they fly and their attitude and just in their general like flight path, whether you have a chance or whether they are just beelining it to a certain spot and that's where they're going. So it is it's all different, but it's kind of all the same no matter where you are. So
it's pretty difficult no matter where you are. It's the bottom line.
They're wild animals that are spending these, up here, these ducks aren't getting hunted every day, but yet they're being hunted by something, whether it's us or an eagle or who knows. So they're alert every single day, and that's what they're basing their lives on. So they have to be aware of what's going on. So they're not stupid. And I'll even go so far as to say is our opening weekend up here, people are going to assume that these ducks are just stupid and you can stand out in the open and shoot them. It's not that. Like, even our opening weekends, I mean, you have to be hidden and you have to be, you have to do things right. Like, it's not like it's going to be here over the next 2 weeks for us, but they don't just give it up, and they're not committing suicide. They're not flying into what they see as danger. So it's, they're not as smart as they're going to be, but they're not dumb by any means. So
yeah,
but
yeah. Sure.
So like, is where you started hunting is in the woods? I mean, would you say like how much of like your hunting has been in the woods versus out of it?
Yeah. So my dad, he loved to duck hunt. That's what he did, and fish, but he didn't have the money to own land or lease land. This is in the 70s, early 70s and through the 80s. So he just, naturally gravitated towards public land. And this is all pre, GPS, pre-satellite, really even pre, ATV times. So you're walking or boating. And, so he had some holes on public land that was, back then secret. And the only way you knew they were secret because nobody else ever showed up there to hunt.
Yep.
And so, it was a lot of work because it was a long, long walk. We'd drag a boat, and chain it to a tree and leave it in their little John boat. Cause, they had some flooded timber, some what I guess you'd call a break or a slough, kind of big cypress trees. I don't know, pretty picturesque, type place, but too deep to wade maybe in certain spots. So he'd drag a John boat in there, chain it to a tree and, pull it out at the end of the season. But, that's where I kind of cut my teeth. I mean, he taught me, how to do all that. And, I'd say I don't remember exactly. I don't know, probably 9 or 10. I remember him putting, his old canvas waders, probably the smallest size he could find was a 7 or 8. And, I could probably fit in
you were swimming in them
of it.
Yeah.
So he'd put them on me and he'd roll them down and he would get a braided leather belt and he would just cinch that sucker around my waist as tight as he could. And so that's how I started, he just kind of drug me along and, I remember freezing my tail off and there were some good hunts, a lot of not good hunts, but just, hearing the calling and I loved it. I liked it. And, one of the first hunts I do remember, it was just he and I in a flooded green tree area. And, the first time I remember just a really big group of ducks coming through the trees and landing all around us. And I don't remember how old I was, but I remember knowing enough that you don't move and you don't shoot until he says to, right?
Yeah.
And so, finally, we're watching, he's just letting them come. And finally I probably moved and they, one picks up and he says, shoot. And I do remember I was shooting a junior, 20 gauge, little, youth model shotgun. I remember killing what I remember as my first mallard on that hunt. And then, I was always blowing a duck call in the house. It really wasn't about killing for him. He had gotten past that point, matured to, just appreciate different things. And he taught me that, like it's so much more about pulling the trigger and what's on that strap. And calling was a big part of that. And, he took me to the Worlds the first time, when I was 12. Alvin Taylor, tailor-made duck calls, had a booth set up. He bought me a cedar call. That's the first call I remember actually ever having. At that time it was probably $45,
that's
$60.
That's not a very popular wood.
Yeah. And, so I was just around it a lot. And then he got into the contest scene and, he finished second in the Mississippi State like 5 years in a row. He just couldn't quite get over the hump to qualify, but he's very well respected in that world. He made a lot of his best friends, are from his, comp calling days. He ran the Mississippi State and regional for about 7 years. And so naturally, I gravitated towards that and participated and did my fair share of it. He was the guy that had a duck call in his pocket, 365 days a year. Just how he was. Never made one, but he just, he loved it. Love the tool.
And very few guys have made them, but man, it's one of those things that I know there's people that, like, for me, everything that I do when it involves hunting, well, I shouldn't say almost everything involves calling animals, whether it's mallards, turkeys, elk, geese, whatever it is. The only thing that I've done, I think I'm kind of hooked on now that doesn't involve calling is chasing mule deer. But everything else involves that interaction with that calling. There's just something about it that man, since like I'm the same way since I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, I had a duck call. I had a Falks. And that was my first one. And just blowing that thing. And I don't think I ever even saw a duck turn until I was probably like 20. And I remember the first time I saw a duck turn to a duck call. And I pointed out to my cousin who was with me. And then we were like, that worked. And ever since my duck hunting changed from that moment on in terms of how I thought about it and how I blew a call. But man, like it's amazing to me what the calling side of life brings people to and how it keeps them in like this side, like this part of the world. And like, they're super passionate about it. And I can't say there's people that aren't callers that aren't good or passionate duck hunters, but most of the guys that I know that are very passionate about it are also dudes that are very proficient on a duck call.
Yeah. I can relate to obviously I blow a duck call almost every day of the year. It's what I do. It's what I love. It's what I have a passion for. On the flip side of that, I love to turkey hunt. Absolutely love it. But the first time I pick up my turkey call that year is probably the night before opening day. And I have to dig through my vest to find it. And still I but I feel like I'm okay at it. I know how to kill turkeys and, kill my fair share. I love that interaction.
Turkeys,
but it's not something I do. I don't blow it or use a turkey call every day.
So
some guys do.
Diaphragm or box or
I like a diaphragm because I like to have my hands free.
Okay, I agree.
Personally, it just works for me. I'll use something else to locate. Maybe I'll use a box. I keep a box with me.
I love box calls for locating.
My buddies, they really like the pots, the slates. If we have two people hunting, we will use that. But if I'm by myself, I'm going to have, a diaphragm call because, you never know. Sometimes they gobble all the way to you. Sometimes they just slip in and you gotta be ready.
It doesn't take much to make, like, turkeys are a different deal. It doesn't take much for you to not be able to move or be pinned down and having that thing in your mouth and not trying to finagle a box call or a slate call is an issue. So,
yeah. So that's what I've made a few, slates, either last year or year before. They were more decorative. I put together some stained glass and, for the soundboard, and use clear glass on top. And, it was really more like you could hold it up and it looked like a window. Yeah. They were nice. They were. I killed a turkey with one, sold a few, but, really just not my deal. I love, as far as the turkey call making, I stick with duck calls.
Yeah, I hear. I would, if I ever get involved in, I've become interested myself in like making my own. Like, I'm not going to get in business doing it like you are, but man, I think it would be cool to make my own just someday, just to play with all the tone board angles. And I'm sure I would probably have 50 to go through before I got one that I liked, because I'm pretty particular.
Part of the process.
Yeah, I'm pretty particular in my duck calls in terms of what I like. I have a lot of what people would consider very good duck calls that sit on my shelf that I would never take duck hunting with me because I think they sound like crap.
Yeah.
Or I've got like 4 that I like.
That's just so weird because everybody, has a different air presentation into a call. We say blow hot air into a call. What does that mean? Well, the air that you fog a window with, that's hot air. Yep. Okay. Well, how do I go into a duck call? I mean, it's difficult to tell somebody how to blow one, but you can still be getting hot air into a call. The same air I'm putting into a call, but your tone is totally different than mine. The back pressure that you like is different than what I like.
And their tongue is a little bit different and their hand is a little bit different. It takes very little to make a big difference in that stuff, and people don't get that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think part of it is the way our ears are just as humans. So kind of, if you look at it, like music, why do I like a song and you don't like that song? Is it the chords and the notes and the melodies and, all that? You hear something different than I do. Yeah. And I think, just a duck call is a musical instrument and everybody hears and likes different tones. Hence why, you have 4 you like. I could pick up one of the others that you don't feel like fits you, and it could be my favorite call out of your collection from a sound standpoint. For
sure. Yeah.
And that's a challenge. That's a challenge as a call maker is, you're mailing out calls, and how do you you do your best to be inquisitive, to your customers. What do you like? Like back pressure, you light, you blow hard. I mean, you ask all these right questions to try to come up with that perfect call. And at the end of the day, a lot of times, I send sound files, to my customers, of the call. So they show the high, the high, the low, the range from there, and say, all right, it's in that call.
Yeah, this is how I blow the call. It's up to you to get out of it.
Yeah. And so it's in there. It's 50% call, and the other 50% is the operator. And, you do your best to send it out, like somebody wants it. But, it's a challenge. It's,
beyond that.
To, have people to my shop.
Man,
if I can tune that sucker for you right there with you sitting in front of me, we're going to be good. I've spent
enough time in retail and seen enough people try to return duck or goose calls that they say, oh, this doesn't work. And I'll say, oh, well, let me check it out quick and pick it up. And it sounds amazing. And you see their eyes go, oh, well, it didn't work before, but okay, let's go over to the call booth here and we'll talk about duck calls a little bit. And then the next thing you know, they're blowing it. It sounds great. And then leave and they're happy. So
yeah. I mean, my buddy, Kent Cullen,
that dude has got the most
with a duck call,
amazing sound on a duck call. One of the most amazing sounds on a duck call ever.
So we were at a contest together, and this was a while ago, many years ago. And, he had his own call line at this point. And,
the hobos.
So he said, Josh, he said, this guy just sent me his call back, and, he said it doesn't sound right, and this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, well, what's it sound like? He blew it. So, it sounds pretty good to me. He blew that call. He didn't touch it, the reed or the insert, and or the court. And he blew that call in the contest and won the contest with it.
It's funny because
guy said it back, said it didn't sound right.
I don't know if you follow Field Hudnall on Instagram, but he put a post up just a couple days ago about that exact same thing when he worked for Zinc, and he had a customer returned duck call that he took and won the world live duck with that exact call.
Did he really?
Yep.
I tell you, man, it's like I said, you're dealing with a musical instrument, and that is the biggest challenge for a call maker is to get it right for the guy. It may fit you, man. It may be the best call. It just you put it on your laner today as a call maker, but you want that guy that you're sending it to. You want him to feel the same way.
Some of it,
and that's so we're always striving for what I'm always striving for.
It's impossible because a lot of it has to do with a caller should be able to adapt to their call, because you can, I feel like I'm competent enough that you can give me a super clean sounding call, which I don't like, but I can make it sound close to what I want. Or you can give me well, I don't think I've ever blown a call. It's too raspy, but you could give me a super deep, thick, raspy call and I can make it sound pretty much like I want it to by throwing a little less voice into it.
Yeah.
And cause you can't, you're never going to get a duck call. I mean, unless the guy goes into Cabela's and walks, and if you're or Max where they have 100 different high-end duck calls and you try every one of them, it's going to be almost impossible to try to nail that sucker for an individual guy because so many guys don't have that control over how they blow a duck call. And you
have that from, experience and practice,
Yeah, but that's like a lot of guys who are buying duck calls do not have that. And I'll say this, and you don't have to because you're selling duck calls and I'm not selling duck calls, but most people who buy duck calls are not very good duck callers. And I mean, like there's a switch that's flipped in your duck calling repertoire where all of a sudden you know how to control almost any duck call given to you. Like I'm assuming if I gave you 10 of my duck calls, you're going to make most of them sound good. I can make most of them sound good. Some of them I like a lot more, and I don't have to work as hard to make them sound good. And those are the ones I like, and they're the ones I blow. And then there's people who aren't going to be able to make, 9 out of 10 of those sound good. And the one that they do sound good is kind of good because they haven't spent that time, and that there's a certain thing in that time frame that you're practicing that all of a sudden it just happens. It's like, I don't know.
Clicks. Something.
Yeah. Like I wish I was a guitar player so I could be like, you go from Stevie Ray Vaughan to like the Nickelback guitar player, like the Nickelback guitar player is probably a pretty good guitar player, even though he probably gets no respect, but he's not Stevie Ray Vaughan or whoever there is. And there's a difference there. And Stevie Ray Vaughan could probably make a Walmart guitar sound amazing, and the Nickelback guy would make it sound like a Walmart guitar. So,
So when you look at that, from a call maker standpoint is, so sure, everybody is not going to stand up on the world stage, have that ability. And that translates to hunting situations. I just use the world as an example. So what do I do? How do I educate people? And that's what it's all about is, so if a guy can't, so how do you teach him how to do that?
Especially over the phone.
A variety of ways. We started the call nights back a couple years ago where I was getting a lot of questions. Josh, would you work with me on calling? So I decided just to have a night where you just invite people over, and let's blow duck calls and I'll work with you. And, I had some of those guys that I know that are very good callers, come and they, we kind of split up into groups. We had a dozen or so people come and it was a success, it was free. I bought some food for everybody and we just hung out and had a great time. And, so we do it again the next month and it doubles in size. And the next thing I know, we got 40 people at the shop.
Wow.
And now you can't do individual lessons,
Oh yeah. Now so you're speaking when the whole to call night,
started having guests, Billy Starks and, John's been my guest, John Stevens a couple times and, David St. John. We're going to do another one actually in November 1st. Mike Lewis, wrote the Arkansas Duck Call book. It's going to be my guest. So then I put on a novice contest in my backyard, a meat calling contest. And just to give people, calling contests are extremely intimidating.
Oh, unbelievable.
Extremely intimidating.
Unbelievable.
So I said, all right. So, with that in mind, and with the platform that I had with call nights and making calls here, why not just, all right, let's host a contest. Let's put on a novice contest for guys that are first timers. Or I think the parameters, I can't remember, like you couldn't have ever placed in the top 3 or so in any contest, ever to be able to blow in this thing. And what we did was we went, working up to the contest I'd have guys over and work on their routine and teach them a routine. And, they'd email me sound files or text me sound files, and I'd, give them feedback. So it's kind of like that whole prep, up to the contest. We get to contest day. I say, guys, here's what we call the bullpen, the bus, where you're going to call it. It's where you're going to sit. Here's how we do it. You're going to draw a number, and this is how you're going to go, and sequence your first round. Like, you all walk up to the stage. Now, you can't turn, here's your light. You can't, turn this far, this way, as far this way. You can't talk on stage. Like, basically just a walkthrough for a guy that's never done it. And I'm telling you, even in that situation, it's your first contest, those guys were nervous, and girls. We had some girls blowing it. And, so that's where I feel my obligation is as a call maker. If everybody's not a great caller, provide education and provide teaching moments for people, to become a better caller. My messages are wide open. I put my cell phone number out there. People can call me. I have tons of guys that send me sound files of their call, their hunting call. So, what do you think? Well, and if you do that, I'm going to be honest. There's no sense in me telling you that's awesome if it's not. But if it's not, I'm going to tell you how to fix it.
People don't
something to work on.
Receiving that information is hard to do because everybody, no matter if they've spent 5 minutes practicing their duck call or if they've spent 500 hours practicing a duck call, they're all in their own mind a very good duck caller. And breaking down that wall to hear that is very tough sometimes. If someone's coming to you,
think that they're probably not going to reach out for some help. Honestly, it's the guys that are
hopefully
that think that they're reaching out.
Yeah.
But that all came because I was afforded that opportunity. Rick Dunn, the guys at the Echo Shop, Butch, all the guys at the R&T Shop, Greg Hood in Clarksdale, Mississippi, all those guys.
That's a name you don't hear very often anymore. Greg Hood.
Work with me.
That guy was dominant back in early 90s.
What was that?
Greg Hood is a name you don't hear very often anymore. That guy was like super dominant.
Yeah.
And had some awesome duck calls back in like the early 90s. And I remember when he used to be in Mac's catalog, and that's where I saw his calls. I tried one day, and man, they were awesome. I think I bought one, but that's one of those, that's like a blast from the past for me.
Yeah, he helped me a tremendous amount, but like, those guys would take, and still will, those guys will take the time to help you, become a better caller. And so, I feel that's our obligation as call makers is, if you want a guy to learn how to blow a duck call right, we'll teach him.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I really, I try to, like I said, that's the other reason, came up with this mobile duck call shop that I'm doing. And part of that is obviously the experience of watching your call get made, right in front of you, from wood blanks you select out of the trailer to then translating into tuning the call for you right then and there in front of you and working with you, on your calling. If you want it. Some guys do, some guys don't, but, offering what there's a lot of guys that have forgot more than I ever know about a duck call, but what I do know, I'm more than happy to pass along and try to help a guy get better.
Well, it's one of those things that it's sometimes hard to offer up, knowledge, and you have to offer up the knowledge that you've learned in a somewhat tactful way. Because duck hunters are a very proud group, and it's one of the things I learned working in retail for years. And I was always the duck call guy wherever I worked. I taught a lot of guys to blow calls, and a lot of people are very receptive, and a lot of people are not very receptive. And you need to learn how to do it, not only how to actually do the teaching, but how to get people to want to understand that you're trying to help them and not just be, say, I know how to do this and you don't, or I'm better. Because duck hunters are a very proud group when it comes to almost everything, whether it's putting out decoys or shooting abilities or calling abilities or whatever it is. And so all that stuff, like if a guy can learn how to do that well and help people, that was one of the coolest things that I had when I worked at Cabela's, is having people come back in later on after I worked with them and then say, hey, you sold me this call. And it was probably a Tim Grounds polycarb super mag goose call or a Echo polycarb timber back in the day. I bought that, and then I learned how to use it, and I did what you said, and then I bought this, and then all of a sudden you listen, and they're like, and 2 years later, they're an awesome caller, and you're like, and that's like super satisfying thing. And it's kind of goes slightly against how I think most duck hunters feel of keeping a lot of that stuff to themselves, but it's so rewarding to help someone to get into that next step, because man, like when you start doing that, those folks are taking a whole different level of duck hunting appreciation, I would say, into their realm. And like for a guy like you, all of a sudden, now they're going to buy a duck call or another duck call. And those are the dudes that are out there doing the same thing for other people, hopefully down the road. So
yeah, you hope so. I mean, and like I said, I mean, it was done for me. So, why wouldn't I share that information and pass it along and, try to make people better hunters and better callers. And, it's a fun part of what I do. That's for sure.
So we never even really talked about like your actual call making. So, Josh is so you were in the corporate world for quite a few years, and then just all of a sudden just like, to me, like I didn't follow you early on, but to me, like you kind of just bust on the scene and here you are, and you've got I would say a very successful, small shop call operation. And there's a lot of guys doing it. And the reason that I didn't probably know about you and follow you or even look into other guys like you is because there's so many people doing it all of a sudden. 15 years, 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago, when I personally was very heavily involved in the call world, and I was blowing every which call under the sun and trading a call for this and trading a call for that. And I was like, back then I had a duck call in my hand. Like you said, like your dad did, like I always had a duck call on me. They were in my truck, and a goose call was in my truck. And man, I wanted to do this and that on a duck call and a goose call. And then there was a very limited number of manufacturers of duck calls. Like you could maybe get, if you were really into it, maybe find 20 guys that were readily available that had calls out there. And now over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, I can't even imagine how many guys are making calls on a small time basis. And so you see that, you're almost overwhelmed. And that's kind of what I was. I was like, man, all these guys come up there. They're not Rich and Tone, and they're not Echo, and they're not, Field Proof. And they're not these big, well-established brands. Like, I tried a couple of them. I just was never impressed with them. And then I was talking to Kyle Jones, and he mentioned your name along with a couple other manufacturers. And he's like, they're very good calls. I'm like, okay, well, so I kind of looked into your stuff a little more. Then I listened to your song. I was like, okay, this guy knows how to blow a call. That's a good sign. And he sounds good. And then I'm like, I kind of started to take notice more of a lot of the smaller call makers and pay attention to what the calls sound like. And that's kind of how I got into you. So like, I mean, what exactly like prompted you to like go from just being a duck caller to all of a sudden like, oh, I'm going to be in the call business? There's got to be a transition period in there.
Yeah. I mean, you made a comment earlier, that you would just like to make your own call maybe one day, just to go kill ducks with.
Yep.
Never to sell one, never do anything. Well, that's how it started for me. It was essentially, I don't say a bucket list thing. It was just, So back, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, a friend of mine started hand turning a few calls, and he only made 10 or 15, but he called me over one day and he said, "Hey, would you come, kind of give me your opinion on it?" It's back when I was in the contest calling fairly, heavily, I guess. And so I went over there, and it was the first time that I had really, I guess, seen a truly, hand turn call, from start to finish. I didn't watch him turn it. He already had him turn, but I saw the lathe, and I all of a sudden had an appreciation for what I was holding then,
Yeah.
When I left, I said, one day I'm going to make my own call, and I'm going to go hunt. I'm going to kill some mallards with it. And that's how it started. It was just an idea of, to see if I could make one and go fool ducks and kill them, and, so I did. I set out to make one, and, I made one. I just made my dad one, and, started with a flat jig, doesn't give you any sound. So it's very frustrating, trying to come up with first of all, I call it make a sound, and then a good sound. That's a process in itself, but it wasn't something that I got tired of. It was kind of, the more I did it, the more it became a mission that you're going to come up with a good final product just for yourself, And so I finally came up with that call, and like I said, made my dad one, and showed my best friend, and he's like, "Well, if you'll make me one, I want to be the first one to ever buy one." I said, "Well, I ain't never going to sell these things, but whatever." So I made him one, and, but I couldn't get away from it. I loved it. I enjoyed the whole process and so much. And so I kept going, and, all of a sudden Facebook becomes, viable source. It used to be forums, and, 2012, 13, 14, and there, Facebook, all of a sudden you have these pages, that you can promote what you're doing. And so, I started selling a few calls, and, finally had an insert that I was happy with, that I had a jig made off of. In that first year, Seth Fields got a hold of one of my calls, went and blew in the World Live Duck in Maryland. It was his first year to compete. My first year making calls. Nobody knows who either one of us are at that time. And I'll be dang if he doesn't place in the top 5 with, first time guy, first time call maker. And so it was, I raised a few eyebrows that year. And that same year, email comes across my desk about, this thing Garden and Gun magazine's doing, Made in the South Awards, and it had an outdoor division. And, I thought, why not send some stuff in? And so I sent one of my cord wrap calls and a captive ring call in, and I'll be dang if I didn't get selected to be in the magazine. And, so you get some validation there from the contest stuff, from sound, you get some aesthetic validation from, a worldwide magazine. And really all of a sudden, whether I wanted to be or liked it or didn't like it, I was a business, and, people start calling, wanting to buy something that I make. And it just progressed from there. But yeah, I was in the corporate world, worked for a local cat dealership in sales for 12 years, and, doing duck calls at night on the weekends. And, it finally got to the point where I just had to make a decision. I was so far behind on orders, and, it's kind of one of those, follow your dreams, big leap of faith, kind of look in the mirror one day and say, how are you going to tell your kids to follow their dreams if, daddy doesn't have the guts to do it? So I made the decision, to follow my dream and my passion. The Pheasant thing came about. The creative director just, I guess, had been following me on Instagram, and I get a message randomly one day saying, "Hey, would you possibly be interested in making us a small batch of calls?" And, that's taken off. We're into, the second batch with them, and, done some stuff for, turn a call out of the mossy oak tree, from mossy oak. And
hold on. So maybe people didn't catch that, but so you actually made calls out of the wood from the original mossy oak brand, the tree that they would have considered to be Toxie Hayes and his dad would have considered to be their tree.
Yeah, it was actually called, so it was on their camp, turkey hunting camp, and it was called the mossy oak tree. It's kind of a meeting place for them. And, that was what they named, the company after was that tree. And,
that little company known as Mossy Oak.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, so they contacted me and, the tree is, died and they had it milled up and, they said, here's what we got going on. It was a benefit for Catch a Dream and St. Jude. And so, Daniel Hayes came down and took some pictures of the process and, they auctioned it off and, the call sold for, I think $4,000 and it raised a lot of money for charity. And, I'm just fortunate, man. It's a lot of right place, right time. Obviously, I try my best to put out a very quality product aesthetically and sound quality wise, both. And, so here we are, I've got 3 shops. I don't know why. I can only be at one at one time. We got a shop in Raymond, obviously. We got a shop in Charleston, South Carolina, which is in a business called Circle 7, which is connected with Garden and Gun buildings over there. And then I have my mobile shop, which is it's really fun, really cool experience. I'm gonna be on the road a lot this fall, mainly at private duck camps.
I saw that, and it's basically an enclosed trailer that you've turned into like kind of a man cave type of thing looking. If you were just to look at it from the inside real quick, it's almost like a man cave thing. It's got wood finished and it doesn't look like an enclosed trailer when you're in there. And it's your workshop where you produce calls. Yeah.
Yeah. So if, honestly, it was my sister's idea. We were at some function one night and just, she loves to travel. She lived in New York City for, 15 years and, just recently moved back. My dad, got really ill. And, so we were at dinner or something one night and we were talking about kind of what her next move was going to be. And she was talking about, maybe this whole van life thing where she just travels the country and, does her thing, whatever. That's just kind of how she is. And she's like, you could do that with duck calls. You could make a shop that you just travel around the country and, people that can't come to your shop, well, take the experience to them. Yep. It's like that is the single greatest idea you've ever had.
Oh, hell yeah.
I can't believe nobody's ever done this. So literally the next day I went to a trailer place about an hour from my house and, I'm fully prepared to have to customize, order, and take out a loan to buy a brand new trailer. And the only used trailer the guy had on the lot was the one that I bought for my shop. What? The guy had previously purchased it new from him. I was going to make a camper out of it. So basically it already had some electrical run. It had the indoor outdoor carpet in the bottom. It was insulated and it was just the right size, that I was looking for. And so obviously I built the workbenches and had to add some electrical outlets. And my next door neighbor has a sawmill. So we milled up the cedar that you see on the walls when you look at the pictures of it. But, I'm just the kind of guy, like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And because if I'm going to put it out there for people to see and if I'm going to, charge you something, I'm going to offer you a first class, world class experience. Yep. And part of that, the first step of that is creating a shop that's, first class. And so that was, the thought process that went into it. It took about 6 months to get it all together from the wrap, to, getting the wood milled, to get the tools, to get everything bolted down. It was a fun project. It was like every time I'd step out and think I was done, I was like, well, crap, there's one more thing. There's one more cigar box that I had to go screw to the bench. So when I take off, it doesn't go flying across the trailer,
Those are the kind of things that just kill you in a project. Like even in my duck boat that I built, I would be like, okay, I'm almost done. And 3 weeks later, I'm still almost done. And then the next week, I'm real close. I'm just about done. And then you finally finish because you've got there's all those little things. And like in that trailer that you have, it's like that. It's like, it's got all the details and all the cool stuff. So I can imagine like, I need to finish this little piece and that little piece. And like, you're never done until you're like super beyond happy with it.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, because
literally. Something I got done, and then I look around, I'm like, well, crap. I don't even where to, no, I mean, you can't sit. Like, I don't have chairs in here.
Man.
So then, of course, I mean, I could have just got some, I guess, regular folding chairs or something, but, I want to order some nice chairs with my logo on them. And,
yeah.
I mean, those small things just, they make a difference. And I just don't like to, or I'm not going to, I'm not going to cut corners. Sure, it costs a little more money and, all that, but the end result is, what you see now. And I'm very happy with it. I took it to Reelfoot last weekend, and, a lot of other call makers came in and hung out while I was turning calls, and it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. It was the most fun I've had since I've started making calls. You're
surrounded by like-minded individuals that are appreciative of what you're doing, probably.
Yeah. And I mean, I had guys in there literally from basically the time I opened it up to the time that the whole thing kind of shut down. There was folks in there either talking, or I was making a call, or, something going. It was kind of like a little meeting spot, even though it was kind of tucked in my little corner away from all the, a lot of the booths and stuff.
You know what I would probably liken it to? Are you aware of Sam Soholt?
I am. I was about to bring his name up.
Yeah.
Poet Land Bus.
Yep. It would be just like, cause I'm not super great friends, but I've gone a couple hunts with him and spent some time on that bus, and it's just like that. It's the same thing. He's made the bus more than just a bus. It's got its own life of itself, and him as a person has taken it to a whole other level. And all of a sudden this bus is this unbelievable living quarters, hunting camp type thing that serves another purpose just beyond a mode of transportation for him. And it's like, every time I've been with him, it's just been me and him, or me and him and a buddy. But like when he goes to these events, it's the thing that people gather to. Like, you watch him at I think it was the BHA Rendezvous.
Yeah.
And there was another thing too. Where was that? There's one other deal where he was at, and it was like everybody was gathered at his bus because it's just like the cool thing. Like, it's just a school bus, and it's pretty damn pimped out inside.
Yeah, it's way more than a school bus.
Oh yeah. But it's from the outside, it's a school bus. And when you get inside, it's awesome. And you look at it, and like, that's where people go to. And and if you go to the duck hunting world, that's your because duck calls, I would say duck calls are like the thing more so than decoys, more so than any other piece of gear that guys that duck hunt not gravitate to, but man, like, we just are like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like duck calls, and to have this piece of equipment that's right there, and a dude making duck calls, like awesome sounding, cool looking duck calls right there. Like, how cool is that? Like, that's never been done.
Yeah. I mean, that's, that's the whole purpose of it is, when somebody's passionate about something, it can, that can transfer, and when you see, hopefully when you're watching me work and, kind of watching me do my thing, make the call and tune it and all that, like, hopefully that gets you fired up about that call, I mean, it's,
sure.
Cause it's really heartfelt. Every time I turn a duck call, I mean, I'm starting with a square piece of wood, and I'm putting everything I got into it for that final product, to be as perfect as it possibly can be, for somebody, because I realize that you're spending your hard-earned money on a product that I make, first of all, but second of all, and even more importantly, is I hope I'm giving you a product that becomes an heirloom, right? That you're going to pass down to your son or your grandson. And then there's a story associated with that call. My dad got this call from, this guy named Raggio, somewhere in Mississippi.
He built it for him.
Handmade it, or, he had this mobile shop, and he made it in front of my granddad. and it just becomes more than just a duck call.
For sure. I mean, and like a guy can even have a cheap junk duck call that becomes more than a duck call. Absolutely. Because a lot of that stuff takes on extra value as it's passed down, or even if it's not passed down, but just how it was bought. I mean, like I still I once in a while see my dad's lanyard, and he's got the old Jensen on it, and it's not a special call, but I literally cannot give him one of my calls. He won't take them. He will not take them. And of course, like functionally speaking, they're way better duck calls. He will not take them. He's got a Jensen and God, I can't think of the name of the other one. It actually sounds pretty decent for what it is, but they take on a whole nother thing once, like, as time goes over and a hunt or two is passed with them and memories are made with them. And then you combine that with having and seeing the duck call made specifically for you, and having some say in how it sounds and how it looks, even if it's not if you're mobile shop, but just saying, hey, this is what I want. This is what I like. And then they get that call and they look at it like, whoa, this isn't just your average call that you go buy at Cabela's off the shelf. So it's an entirely different thing. And of course, we should maybe even bring up your pricing isn't what you're going to go buy a call for at Cabela's. It's not a $100 call, and people think that's expensive, but you're getting an entirely different thing. It's just like if someone was going to go buy a decoy at an event that they watched a guy carve in front of them, they shouldn't expect to pay the same for that as they do for greenhead gear, plastic decoy made in bulk. I mean, they're very functional. They do the job, but it's a different side of life, and they're not the same thing. So
there's definitely a market, obviously, for a CNC call. But you're right.
Millions of them.
It's just something different about it. From a pricing standpoint, I mean, I see from a culturally, just in general, people are appreciating whether it's a duck call or hell, I don't know, a decoy or a candle or a writing pen.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it is.
Anything.
People,
jackets, any of that.
Appreciate. Stuff. People are there's an appreciation for the handmade good.
Yep.
And I mean, truthfully, I don't make enough calls to be, competition for really anybody. Honestly, I mean, I don't look at guys as competition. Other call makers.
Like your competition is John Stevens himself. Like that's like those and those guys who are buying his calls aren't going to only buy his calls, but they're going to buy your calls too. Yeah, because they appreciate all of it and they don't want just his, but they see the value in his and yours. And man, to be honest, I don't know a lot of guys that are at that level of, and I'm sure there is like other dudes that are at that level, but there's not a lot, but there's some, and they're going to buy all that good stuff, whether it's you or him or whoever the next guy is, that are all at that top end level, and they're not going to buy the guy who is just started and makes his barrel and buys the Echo insert and throws it in. They're not going to buy that call, but they're going to buy all the other high end stuff. And they probably also got several $1,000s worth of decoys sitting on the shelf in their shop that are that same thing. And it's a different part of the thing. And that's actually one thing I was actually wondering, what percentage of your calls do you think are hunted?
I get asked that question fairly often. And it's strictly a guess. I mean, oftentimes the guy will say, I'm hunting this call. Or oftentimes just the opposite. Hey, this call is going on my shelf, man. I just want one of your calls, and I want to put it on my shelf, show it off, and I'm fine either way.
Yep.
I just appreciate the fact that you want something that I make.
For sure.
So I don't know. I would guess they're all made to hunt with.
Yeah.
The fancy burls and all that, they're sleeved. I mean, they're made to hunt with.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably 70-30. 70 get hunted, 30 go on shells. That's strictly a guess.
I was guessing maybe higher. I mean, because your prices are up there, and I would have guessed that maybe more were just putting them on shelves. And I like the fact that they are, they get hunted because Ryan Graves, who we both know, he hooked me up with a John Stevens call, and I should actually go check my mail because it might be getting here today. And those calls are not cheap. And I told him, I said, dude, I've never seen one, but I love it. And I love the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to hunt this. Am I stupid for doing that? He said, absolutely not. A true hunter would do that. I said, all right, well, send it to me. And so I shipped him off the money, and it's on its way to me. And I want to hunt that sucker.
I tell you, it's going to really good.
I was actually thinking,
and they're pretty awesome.
I was actually thinking to myself, I go, I'm really glad I didn't lose my lanyard 2 days from now.
Yeah, that's a fact.
with that call on there. Luckily, I found it regardless.
The utmost respect for John. I mean, I'm glad to call him a friend. He's doing some cool things. Not only with R&T, but with Jay Stevens calls and build a brand new shop. It's going to be pretty freaking cool.
Are you going to be at the Callapalooza deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I can
say yes. I'm hoping
I can say yes.
if I've known it's going on, so I'll throw a little dig out for those guys. Is that they have a huge event? I think it's going in March of this coming year of 2019. A huge call collecting contest thing.
Yeah, it's going to be
at that place.
Pretty cool, just event, and John, like I was just talking about, I look at this whole thing like a brotherhood of sorts. There's lots of duck calls made every day and sold, and bought, and I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. I just
I would totally agree. It's the same thing with me and however many other guys I would consider as peers in the waterfowl photography world. I think we all get along. We all chat about gear. We BS, most of us. And there's a few guys that I don't know. I just don't have a connection to. But for the most part, say there's a dozen of us that are very, very deep into it. And I probably know 8 or 9 of them, and we chat on a somewhat regular basis. And I consider us, like you said, more like a brotherhood. Like we all are in it together, and slightly competitors in certain things, in terms of like you just maybe have a little personal pride and things, and I get jealous and I see other people's awesome photos, and it's not jealousy in a bad way, but it's like, man, I wish I could have gotten that photo, and you learn from them because of that, and yet you're all in it together, and so it's a cool thing. Like I would never see any of those guys and be like, man, I don't like that guy because he takes better photos than me. Like, man, I want to meet that guy because he takes better photos than me, and I can learn from him. Type thing.
Yeah, I wish everybody thought that way, about industries and different things. But we're on the same page as that. And to go back to something you mentioned earlier about this kind of emergence of call makers, I think you're right. But I also think that with the advent of the platforms of Instagram and Facebook, I think all of a sudden, because I come across guys that say they've been making calls for 20 or 30 years that I've never heard of. And I feel like I'm fairly educated coming up through the calling contest stuff and what my dad was involved with. It was simply because they weren't at shows, because maybe they just did it as a hobby, so they didn't travel a lot. And there just wasn't, that guy's not going to pay for a magazine ad in Field and Stream back in, 1995.
No way.
So I think the advent of the social media platforms is, you're right. There are more call makers. I think they're more visible now.
It absolutely blew that industry up. Like it took it from a very, very small time thing to a fair amount of people making a fair amount of calls right now. I mean, it was
and quality stuff.
Very
there's so
quality
much information out there now.
Yeah.
As far as how to do it, that you can. There's guys making gorgeous. There's some flat out artists out there, and they're using a duck call as their canvas. I mean, I saw some stuff in Reelfoot. My gosh. I mean, it's unbelievable what guys are doing with duck calls these days. I love it.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's like some of the stuff. I don't think people are out of line in saying that they don't want to hunt it. Although to me, a duck call is something, it's a tool. And so I feel to set something on a shelf is almost a disservice to the call itself. But man, like some of those things you look at them and
200 or 300 calls. I can't hunt 200 or 300 calls. I'm a call collector as well as a maker.
That's true.
And I appreciate them for what they are. Whether it be the most simple, Coca-Cola call or, the most extravagant, checkered carved, ivory inlaid, scrimshawed call. And so you get to reach a point sometimes as a collector and have that appreciation for them that, you're just not, you physically can't hunt every call you get, but you appreciate it just as much, I show all those calls off. I try to get calls from guys, other call makers, because I have a showroom in the front of my shop in Raymond, and people will spend hours in that showroom looking at, I have some waterfowl memorabilia type stuff. And, and I love to show the old calls off, the new calls off, especially Mississippi call makers. I collect all those and, to try to have a platform to help some other call makers and, try to use it best I can.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a thing that's so rich in the just like the waterfowl world. And there's so much of like the duck hunting history that comes out of just flat out duck calls in general. So like, why wouldn't you want to bring that part out? And especially, if you have because people are coming to you to find specifically for it. So if you can help promote it, it's even cooler. So I would, I get like why a person would buy things not to hunt. I'm a little interested in the people that buy like specifically brand new calls not to hunt but I'm a hunter and I'm a hunter more than even a photographer. And today would have been an amazing day for me to take photos. And man, I just can't get myself to not have my gun in my hand. And kind of the same way that I just couldn't get myself to not have like a hunting call in my hand and be looking to shoot ducks. But everybody's got different things going. So that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's fun, man. I love it. It's passion. I mean, we all get to do it for a long time.
Dude, I'd love to have a gig that you're doing, like where you're handcrafting something. Cause I get messages saying that I'm an artist and this and that. I don't feel that way. I feel like you're an artist because you're like making something, creating something and crafting it. But man, like I don't feel that with photos. I feel like I could be, but not the same way as like you are, like where you're like taking a physical object and making it into something. So
photography is so powerful. It's artistry and it's in its own, the right photos, that, so as anybody, you can have a picture that's, for example, I remember a Pheasant picture that I saw when I was probably 15 or 16 as a waterfowl shot. And when I saw that picture, it made me want to wear Pheasant for, if I could afford it one day, it made me want to wear it. It was a powerful, powerful picture. And so, there's some serious creativity and some artistry. Those don't just happen. People think, and I'll tell this quick story. So I had this, photographer come and, the question or the statement you always get, and I know you get it when you put out these great photos is, oh, you must have a great camera.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Good
that's all it takes.
And so, and as a photographer, you have to just laugh that off, because if people say that, they just don't understand. But so anyway, my buddy said that he went to his in-laws' house, and he had taken some family pictures, and the grandmother was cooking that night, and she came up to him and she said, golly, you're taking your pictures are fantastic. You must have the greatest camera on the market, and spend all this money on stuff. And he kind of laughed it off. And so they ate dinner, and he was about to leave, and he looked over to her and he said, that dinner was amazing. So you must have the best, most expensive oven that, person can buy.
Yep, exactly.
That put it in perspective for photographers. I mean,
because that's all it takes is just the equipment, like your lathe and your tools must just be awesome.
Yeah. That's, it's obviously the point is, there's a lot more to photography than, the camera. While it is a tool and you got to have it, if you don't have the eye for it and, the editing skills, everything else that goes into it, you're not going to produce a great image. Yeah. So
without a doubt.
What you do is art.
I suppose. I'll take a little bit of that. Yes. So so on the call making side of life, I've kind of always wondered, what does it take, to make a duck call for someone? If you were just going to make your own duck call to go hunt with, and you didn't need to look fantastic, how long would that take versus something because the calls you've made are, some of those suckers are unbelievable looking, and I've heard them and they sound good. What is a time investment on that? For you as a super experienced guy, and then there's let's say someone wanted to learn how to make a call that just sounded decent, good. Let's say I wanted to learn, and I'm just going to give myself a benefit of the doubt and say that I learned stuff fairly quick, and I have a good understanding of duck call, dynamics. What would it take to learn to make a duck call that you would want to take into the field with you, and one that you wanted to sell to someone that sounded awesome?
Well, the first prerequisite would be you need to be able to blow a duck call fairly well.
Well, hold on. That's not a prerequisite at all to make duck calls. The internet has proven that, because there's plenty of people who cannot blow duck calls that are attempting to sell or selling. I don't know how many they actually sell, but they're out there, and they're pretending to sell duck calls. So let's just say that you should be able to blow a duck call. Maybe
my opinion is, assuming you can blow a duck call, right?
Yeah.
And do all that. Then,
run the whole gamut of sounds available on a duck call.
It just depends. So you got to buy tools and acquire tools that you just don't run to Home Depot and get. There's some specialized tools in call making, and you got to figure out where to find all that and what you actually need. It may take you a year to amass all your tools. I don't know. It kind of depends on how quickly you can do that. And then, I was on fire for it. I was out I didn't have my shop when I first started. I was turning in a garage in the house that we lived in before this one. And, it was swatting mosquitoes in the summer at midnight, and it was freezing in the winter. I'd have all my duck hunting clothes on and a 5-gallon propane tank next to me.
Freezing as in
to come up with that
60 degrees or what?
Do what?
Freezing as in 60?
No, honestly, you guys don't say this, but our 30 is way colder than your 30.
I agree, actually, 100%.
Okay.
Your 40 degrees is colder than our 20 degrees, without a doubt.
It's true. It's weird. It's the moisture in the air.
It's terrible.
So, I was just so on fire for it that, I was literally, at that time I had our first child, and she was a baby, and, it's midnight, so I can't just go wailing on duck calls in our garage. So I'd file and sand, turn, do whatever I was doing, and I'd have to go get in my truck in the driveway and blow the call, and then file and sand, go get in the truck, blow the call. This is, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, and I got to go to work, the next day. So, it depends on, you take your time doing it, whatever. But, it was taking me, God, 8, 10, 12 hours to maybe make a duck call that made a sound, at first.
Decent.
And then, I think I was 4, 5, 6 months into it when I finally got the tone board that I wanted to say, all right, that's it. I'm going to have a jig made off that one. So for some people that's, a few weeks, maybe if you're lucky. And sometimes that's a few years, depending on how much time and effort you're putting into it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just varies. There's no way to say, how you could figure out what's all to get. You get a list and, order it all, get it all in a couple weeks and, start turning. And man, I don't know, you could, I guess realistically, maybe in a few months be able to come up with a call that you can hunt. But typically it's a longer process than that.
So I've never blown on your calls.
Yeah.
And I've never even seen one of your calls. And the only person I've heard blow your calls is you. So what, in terms of like a readily available call, would you compare, like, because so you can tune a call, cutting corks and that, of course, and I'm sure, and you can sand stuff a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
But your overall, your tone board's going to have a general sound and feel to it. And so, like, for me, I blow like the calls I have in my lanyard that I almost lost today is a Layers hybrid with a super stiff reed, I think a 1.375, and a really old stickered short barrel hedge that does not blow like a short barrel. It blows almost more like a Mondo. So it's got that like heavy kind of barky sound to it. And I also love, like, I have a daisy cutter, old daisy cutter that I love that's got a ton of like whine to it. Like, what would you like relate your typical call? If you were just to kick out a call and guy said, I just want a duck call. I don't know what I want for a sound, and you were just going to make him a duck call. What would that like be like on the scale of calls that are people could relate to in terms of how they would blow?
Well, I can tell you, before I started making my own calls, I blown Echo Timber, Southern Game call. I blew a Nasty Boy.
Okay.
I blown a T1 Layers.
Okay. Yep.
Blown a short barrel. So if you look at all four of those calls, all those calls are, a lot of back pressure.
Yeah.
Probably the Layers being the least back pressure of the four, but, you can wind that call. You can control that call very easily, right?
Yep. He's got a good thing going with that design.
Who's that?
The Layers call.
Yeah. Just all four of those calls in general all feel a lot alike.
Yep.
To me, when you put air into the call.
Yep.
But it also, it's hard to say because, you're, like you said, your short barrel is to say that it's set up like a Mondo. Most short barrels are not tuned like that.
No,
so it depends on
not at all.
How your particular call is tuned. I don't know. I mean, from a feel standpoint, I can just tell you that, I like a call with back pressure. I like to be able to control a call. I like a call that has good top end, really good bottom end.
Yeah.
Just good rally. You can be aggressive. I say there's two ways to call ducks. You can tell ducks to come, or you can ask ducks to come. And every day and every condition is different, and you never know which day you're going to have to, use which call. And the tell ducks is real aggressive. The ask is, and you can hear the inflection. It's an inflection difference, right?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
I like a call that'll do both. So my call will do that. So I'd say from a volume standpoint, it's not going to be you're not going to stand on Main Street and blow it. It doesn't have a Main Street ring to it. It's not designed to. It's a hunting call.
Well, they're two. Those are two totally different calls.
I think the word timber is when you say a call is a timber call. Like for us, we blow louder in the timber than we'd ever blow in a field. We're very aggressive. We want to be loud, you know, because ducks can't see you, but they can hear you.
I think that's a misconception about when you take the word timber call and you translate it to someone, especially in the North, they think it's a quiet call.
Yeah.
And I've said, no. You don't blow quiet in the timber until they're right on top of you because they don't see you. Like 100% of your attraction value is coming from the call. Whereas today when I was out, we had 50 decoys out that we paddled back in somewhere and they see those things. Then you blow a duck call a little bit and they see the decoys and you've got kind of the combined factor of calling and decoys. Whereas in the woods, a timber call is doing all of the work at first until they're right on top of you.
Yeah, and then you get quiet. And I mean, a lot of times ducks are coming at us. We don't even blow a call.
Yeah. Or probably just a little bit just to get them to
finish them.
Yep, to center on you.
Yeah. I mean, usually it's just one guy doing it. It's not everybody blowing the calls, you know. So, you know, my call it has that volume that you blow in the timber that I want, you know, and I need. And it also has that bottom end that you can back off of it. And you can do that. You can do that on the call, you know, because you can control it. It's got a little back pressure.
The sexy stuff on the bottom end.
Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how I would describe this, you know, the sounds you get from my call.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, so it's kind of got all the stuff. I mean, so in terms of like what I've blown, the only call I've ever blown, like one of my favorite things about duck calls and following duck calls and reading about duck calls, especially in catalogs, is that you read every single description of every single call is perfect range, high end for those, you know, hot, super tall migrators, all the way down to low, soft chuckles to finish birds close, yada, yada, yada. And the only duck call that I've ever blown that really truly has that is that layers call that I bought. I'm shocked that it does all of it. And I kind of have gathered that your calls are somewhat like that, and I haven't blown them. I'm assuming they're good. And that what I've heard of them is that they are similar to that. They've got kind of that very complete range of you can stand on them, and they have a hard time overblowing. And that you still have that good, like soft, like cool little like earth to them when you want to get like I don't know.
I like a good growly call. Yeah. You know? I do think I have a little different tone than a lot of others, and you know, not any better, not any worse. You know, just a different, something a little bit different. You know, and that's just how I design my tone board. You know, starting with that flat jig, man, it's tough. You know, that thing doesn't give you any sound. Doesn't tell you how to board or anything. And you got to start figuring that out. And if you want to start making calls, you know, I say that's how you start, because it forces you to learn the nuances of that tone board. So if you do sell one day and a guy says, man, that thing's got way too much back pressure for me, I know exactly where to sand then to take that back pressure out or some of it out. And I never would have known that if I wouldn't have started with that flat jig. And it just forces you to learn all that stuff, you know, you really need to know.
I like that.
An example. I mean, I never, when I started, I never set out to, you know, sell a duck call. Wasn't the goal, you know. But I did want to be respected. I want to be respected by the older call makers. And the only way I knew to do that was to start with a flat jig. And then, you know, respect's not given. You're not just jamming someone else's tone board in that you replicated in. I like that. Cause that's the one thing that I think I would love to find. Like, I always think it would be cool to, I know so little about actually producing it. Like, I can blow it, what's out there in existence, but I would love to be able to like be the guy that like, okay, I'm going to make a duck call and maybe I'm going to make the boar like double the size of a boar and the reed's going to be way bigger. You know, I have no idea. Like, I'm just thinking like these are things that maybe could work that no one's tried. And I'm sure someone's tried them. We
like,
tried them. I can probably.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, you're wood shop, and
yep. Yeah,
it's a hobby. You got nothing but time, and
Yeah, you drill a 1/2-inch bore and you make the reed, way bigger and way stiffer or way lighter. Who knows? Whatever it needs to be, some combination. I'm like, oh, it'll be way different. And I'm sure there's probably guys trying to do the same thing with some kind of a goose call reed system away from the basic clucker gut. I mean, that's what all these goose calls now are somewhat centered. I mean, they're different, but they're all based on the mag clucker gut from 20 years ago. And so there's somewhere down the line, something completely different is going to happen. And when that guy makes that, it's going to be like, whoa. So I was thinking, man, if I could make that would be so cool to have just like a completely different sound. But to be honest, if I could just take a regular duck call and make it exactly how I wanted, but have it be me make it and not have to look at what other guys are doing, but just make it. I think that's like the cool thing in like that side of life is like when you have completely just worked on it as a craft, like, 'cause that's what it is. It's a craft. And you took it and worked pretty and kind of made it perfect as to how you wanted it. And then it just ended up that way through trial and error and experience and all that. I think that would just be like the coolest thing. And like we talked a little bit yesterday, it's like I make my own duck blinds, like on my boats. Like I love that. Like I love going out to spots where there's smart ducks and I can stick my boat somewhere and that sucker kills ducks and they come in and they're hovering at 10 yards. And like that little bit of extra satisfaction that you get from doing that, it's just something really cool. So like I can 100% see why you started into the line of wanting to make these things just, on your own, just to kill a duck. And then how cool it is that it kind of transformed into, way more than that now. So I dig that part of it.
It's been an interesting, it's been a very interesting process and watch it unfold.
Man,
I get like you do, I get these notes of encouragement from people and, it just kind of keeps the fire lit. And, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this for, a long time.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, it's a cool gig, man. Like I'm jealous of that. Like I've got a pretty cool gig going and a lot of flexibility and I can hunt a lot. But I do definitely just like, I mean, almost everybody I've had on all 9 of my podcasts, almost all of them are some form of a duck caller, especially the first couple, maybe not known as duck callers, but man, almost everybody else has been a duck or a goose caller. And there's something about that every little bit of it I love. And I just kind of dig the whole part of it. And so I've been looking on some of these call pages more and I'm thinking like what I need to do to get a lathe and the very basic equipment so that I can make myself a duck call that I can hunt on my own. And if I do that, and that'll be like the crowning achievement of my waterfowl hunting.
I tell you, when when people come to my shop, my main shop, or even in the mobile shop, I tell them on the front end, I say, look, I really hope that I make this look really easy, like to the point where you're going to feel like you can walk out of here and go buy a lathe at Harbor Freight tonight and, make your own duck call by in the morning.
Yeah.
I said, but just trust me, like, because if I don't make it look easy, then, I'm trying to master this craft, right?
Yeah.
You don't ever really master anything, but that process of getting to that point where your tools are in the right places, your processes are in order. It's a feel thing. Like turning wood is a feel thing with your tools and, and the lathe and how hard to press and all that type of stuff. And I tell us, man, I hope I make this look so easy that you think you can do it tomorrow, but just trust me. It's not. That tone board is the thing.
And that's kind of the
other is just turning wood.
Yeah. And that's the thing that like attracts me to it is like, it isn't just a gimme. Like you're not just going to go do it and you have to learn it. And it's kind of like, there's a lot of people who have different things. Like for my photography thing, like you don't just jump into it and start taking good photos. And like there's people who like get that desire to like get in there and learn it and learn every little bit of it and how you can make it better and what you can do to change. And all those little ink. And that's the thing that I think really kind of gets me to it. And the fact that it just would be freaking cool to do that, to like have a lanyard, a call on my lanyard that someone that come hunts with me doesn't know me. Like, oh, what's that call? That sounds really good. I've never seen one of those. Yeah, I made it. Yep, I made that. What?
So my call, people look at my lanyard like, that's your call? I said, yeah, I only carry one call. That's all I need.
Yep.
But what it is, it's a green hatch barrel that had a knot in it. And there's a little hairline crack formed around that knot. So I, obviously wasn't going to sell it.
Yep.
And then I was turning an insert one day and, lo and behold, you get down into the wood. It looks perfect on the outside and there's a little void in it. And, so I start turning it out. And so it kind of created a little different shape than my normal shape on the insert. And, so they not going to sell that one. So, the call maker's call is just 2 scrap pieces that, that happen to be
2 that are unsellable to the general public.
Yeah. But it's what I think, in terms of, call makers, he's probably got a checkered, carved and, it's not how it is. And I know a lot of call makers and that their personal hunting call is essentially scraps that, they just weren't going to sell because there's something wrong with it.
Oh, and yeah. Otherwise it takes you more time just to make it because you're spending hours to create those ones and they don't turn out. But it sounds good. So have at it.
Fine with it. So
heck yeah.
That's my personal hunting call.
I love that. Man, I think we've been talking for over 2 hours already.
Good Lord.
I don't know. It flies. Again, I have to apologize to those guys that don't like the long ones because it just always ends up like this, that ends up at 2 hours. So, one thing, where are you headed next? Cause do you ever cross the Mason-Dixon line? Cause doesn't seem like you do.
I will.
That would be good.
It's just, the right opportunity hasn't presented itself for the mobile shop yet to go that far. It gets a little pricey. You have to travel that far pulling that thing with the truck. But so I'm doing, actually I'll be in my hometown next week, working with ESPN Radio. Hunter Renfro, the right fielder for the San Diego Padres, is giving me one of his bats, to turn into a duck call while the morning show is going on ESPN Radio here in Jackson.
So there's no pressure there.
Auction that call off for MORA, Mississippi Organ Recovery Association. My dad just had a life-saving liver transplant New Year's Day this year.
Wow.
So we're huge supporters of that, that organization. Hunter played at Mississippi State, first round draft pick, pretty big name around here.
Yeah.
And, so we're doing that next Tuesday. The next weekend, I'm taking the mobile shop down to an event, South Mississippi, November 1st. There is a call night in Little Rock, Arkansas at Tri-State Truck Center. Like I think we already talked about that. I'm having Mike Lewis as my guest. We'll be talking about his book, obviously about duck calls. He's going to bring some pretty fantastic vintage calls with him to show off. Then you get into, traveling a lot during the season. Most of it is private duck clubs. The only public thing I think I'll have the mobile shop at is they call it the Mallard Masters in Augusta, Arkansas. And
I don't know that.
It's a pretty neat deal. It's a fundraiser also. But I'm gonna be there with it. I think it's the first weekend of December. I have to look at my calendar. But that's going to be probably as close. We were working on a deal in Oklahoma. It hasn't come to fruition. At this point, it may not, but I'm booked up. I could probably handle another 1, maybe 2, private events during the season, but it's pretty crazy, man. It's going to be on the road a lot.
That's cool.
This week, actually, next week.
It's exposing a lot more people to your stuff and kind of showing them what you got going. I think that's that mobile thing is a cool gig. And I wish I wasn't half the country away from you because I could come down and see it and have you make one for me.
Yeah. Well, if you get down to Arkansas or that Augusta thing, man, that'd be a cool opportunity.
When's that going on?
I think it's the first weekend in December. Oh, I'll be at the Worlds. Working on right now a place to park it and use the, you know,
Yeah.
just need somewhere to park.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I'm working with a pretty large company that maybe will have that hammered out here in the next couple of days or so.
Man, I'm torn on going to Worlds because I'm not going to be in it, but I want to go there. Just one, meet people, two, probably to hunt, three, it would be an amazing place to run into a whole bunch of dudes to set up podcasts for all in a short period of time. But it's like literally the peak of our duck hunting season. Like it's when we get as good as we get typically. And I'm like, I just can't quite pull myself away, but maybe I'll swing down for the latter half of it or something. So
yeah, it's a Friday, Saturday deal. You could just come on Saturday.
Oh, you know what? I can't. Ryan's coming. He'll be here that Saturday. I'd have to come Sunday. So yeah.
Yeah. See, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't work.
It's over.
No, we're gonna be busy shooting greenheads at that point in time. So I'll have to come the next day or a few days later. So
yeah. So that's where I'll be, man. Just kind of
cool.
Everywhere.
Traveling around.
Next couple of months. Yeah.
Traveling around, cranking out duck calls, man. That's the life right there.
Yeah. I guarantee you though, it has its set of stresses and challenges with it.
That's the thing. Everything those people who think that people have the ultimate job, it's still a job. Everything is still a job. And there's always that stuff that goes into it that you don't see on the back side of it. And I'm going to say there's definitely the downsides of some of the cooler jobs are way better than the downsides of some of the crappy jobs.
Yeah.
But it's still always a job. So like you can nothing's ever as easy unless you won the lottery. Nothing's ever as easy as it seems. So,
well, I'm not from a lottery winning family. So
no, me either,
my mom
man.
was a school teacher and my dad worked for the state, and then just
I hear ya.
Learn the value of hard work, and
that's how it is.
Going, man.
Yep.
Keeping it going.
Cool, man. I appreciate it having you on. We will have to talk offline here about getting you up north here to shoot some ducks on some open water where you can see them in the distance, and we'll really use that duck call.
That'd be a great experience. Thanks for having me, Phil. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Keep in touch, and thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you next week. Thanks, guys.